All right, it's 2 o'clock. Ready to go. All right, today, welcome, and thank you for coming today. We are here to talk about how we can spot the bot in a future-minded classroom. So we're combining two things here. We're looking at, okay, so if students are using uh, chat bots or AI generated materials, how might I be able to recognize that? And we're also talking about, okay, so now that we know that sometimes they use it for less than ethical reasons, let's teach them how to use it ethically. And I have some ideas for you. And then I have a couple of new things that I just discovered that I'm really excited to share with you at the end as well. So if we're looking through this, our agenda, we're going to talk about our red flags. What can you do when you see those red flags, and what can you do to kind of turn the dialogue so that it's less about how do I use ChatGPT or tools like that for cheating, and more how do I use it to be productive? How do I use it in good ways? Because we do know that it is an industry. Most industries have some kind of AI, artificial intelligence enabled facets of it. So it's up to us to teach our students how to be able to use this effectively. And there are ways that we can use it as instructors too that help to reduce our workload or streamline some of our workload, or to help us focus on what matters, kind of the instruction, and it helps with some of those minutia tasks. And Jason Silverstein is going to go after me today, and he's going to have some of that, and then this he'll add to the AI conversation too. If you just can't get enough AI today, there's me at 2 and Jason at 3. So, all right, here we go. Let's start off though with a little bit of an icebreaker. We're just going to do a little this or that. This is how we're going to make some choices. So in the chat, or feel free to unmute, please let me know your choices. Here's the first one. This or that. Are you an early bird or a night owl? Oh, I see we have night owls. Oh, we have an early bird. Jen snuck in there as an early bird. Excellent. Oh, and sometimes both I even saw. Kind of depends on the day. Excellent, excellent. Neither. Jerry doesn't even want to function. That's it. Terrific. And if you have a nap, Dallas says he can do both. That's terrific. Yeah, I know. And for me, life has kind of changed, right? I used to be a real night owl all the time when I was growing up. And then I became more of an early bird. Lately, it's been weird. It's been a little bit of both. I don't know. But yeah, whatever the situation calls for, Michael's there. All right, excellent. Here's the next one. This or that, indoor or outdoor? Where do you prefer to be? You want to be indoors with all your activities? I see some outdoors, especially on a day like today, right? Excellent. I see a lot of outdoors, a lot of outdoors. Depends on the weather. Absolutely. Both, but outdoors as much as possible. Outdoors overrated. Rick says, no, no, I'm not doing it. Excellent. Yeah. And I agree with you. It kind of depends on the activity, but I do like to be outside, just get some of that fresh air. All right. Chocolate covered broccoli or broccoli covered chocolate? Which one would you prefer? Neither. Ew, gross. Chocolate covered chocolate. There we go. Just the chocolate. I guess if it was broccoli covered chocolate, it might be easier to pick off the broccoli. Oh, we did have a brave soul say broccoli covered chocolate. Excellent. Only the broccoli. I want nothing to do with the chocolate, I saw in the chat as well. Excellent. Excellent. How about this? Knowing your students cheated or knowing students made mistakes? Which would you rather know? For sure, with certainty, mistakes. It sounds like we don't really have anyone who wants to play a gotcha. I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for you to cheat. They want to know that the students weren't cheating on purpose, that they really just made some mistakes. And we have seen that in the past, right? Even with our Turnitin, things like that, our similarity measurements there, percentages. But sometimes students, they forget the parentheses. They don't know how to paraphrase well enough and put things into parentheses, and there are learning opportunities. But we do know that sometimes students, they just really just look for the easy out. How about this? And this one's putting it to the wall here, teaching students to use AI ethically or creating barriers to student professional success. Yeah, you might know I'm a little biased on this one, I think. We do want to help with that ethical use. We really don't want to create those barriers. And we have a lot of students who are afraid to even touch the AI, which we say, yay, that's great. They won't be cheating then. But again, as I was saying, a lot of industries are using some type of AI in what they're doing. So it's on us because we, especially at the community college, most of the students we're preparing, or I should say at least very many of them, we're preparing them to go straight into work. And we want them to be able to participate effectively. So let's get into kind of the meat of this, the beginning of it. Spotting the bot. It's first and foremost most important to know that no AI detection tool is 100% accurate. So there are detection tools out there. There are plenty of them. You saw it in Turnitin for a little bit. We had that turned on. Actually, Turnitin said, hey, here you go. And they put it there without really telling us. And then it was there. And then it turns out that it's not 100% accurate. It wasn't accurate enough to qualify the cost of it, really. So they need to improve it, or these things need to be improved. It was very accurate if your students used ChatGPT. But there's a ton of chat or AI generators out there, and it wasn't as accurate if any of those other ones were used. And you'll find a lot of these detectors aren't. However, I did a little research, and there is, for instance, this one that was presented in a guide for teacher educators on AI detection. And this one said that for free, plagiarism checker, content at scale, they found was the best one. So if you want to look at one, it says it works with ChatGPT 3. I don't know about the accuracy for any other kinds of generators, but this is a resource that you could take a look at. And I'll give you a link to the resource document as well. I'll put that in there now in case you want to explore it. But I hope you kind of stick around here and listen to what we've got to say. But that's the resource document. But this gives you that, and then they give you other information in the guide as well. So that's why I wanted to give you the whole guide. But let's start off by talking about, okay, well, we don't have a detector that is 100% accurate. So what do we need to do? We need to be able to look for a few red flags. And today I happened to see Rick in person today. He even mentioned one of them earlier today that we'll talk about. And if we don't, Rick, make sure you say it. Okay? All right, okay, here we go. So one of the things you want to be able to do is compare their work with their previous work. And I think this one really feels a little bit like a no-brainer. We've had those students that all of a sudden the paper comes, their discussion board participation or the participation in the class was, you know, low, and we didn't know if they really were understanding what they were doing. We're trying to support them, and then all of a sudden they give us something that could be published in a journal tomorrow. And we say, wow, this is a big difference. That's why I have kind of these little twin pictures on here, because if it doesn't compare, if you're suddenly thinking, you know what, it looks like it's something that is too polished, this is something for us to think about. The issue is it opens up a conversation, right? And those conversations are hard to have. But just like with Turnitin with the similarity checker, and if they got, say, 80% similarity, we might have to have a conversation with the student. It doesn't mean for sure that they cheated. They may have made mistakes. But it opens up a conversation. And I know that I've talked to a few other faculty members who said, yeah, as soon as I see this previous work issue, sometimes I'll have the kids come to me, students come to me, and I'll give them kind of either a mini quiz or I'll ask them to talk to me about what they know. Sometimes they know what they're talking about, and sometimes they don't. And those are big indicators that help give you evidence if you need support for then making further decisions. You can also look at citations that are provided. AI generators on average do not cite well, especially if you're looking for APA formatting, has been my experience. It's crazy, it's all over the place. And just so you know, AI generators also hallucinate. They make up stuff. So it is done, if we want to personify the AI, it's trying to make us happy, it's trying to find the answer, so it makes things up. It's important for you to teach your students that too. By the way, if you think you want to use ChatGPT, it makes things up. I put a statement of that into each of my classes that I teach. You are still responsible for what you turn in. You can't say, oh, well, that's what ChatGPT said, because, well, that opens up another conversation. So it's just recognizing that it can make things up, make up people, make up articles that they wrote, make up lots of information. So that's why if you're using it, which is fine, it's ethical in ethical ways. And if your students use it, it's important to double check it and to really consider ChatGPT or your AI generator as your first draft. By the way, all generators hallucinate. It's not just ChatGPT. They all do it. It's just a matter of it. It probably will improve, but at present, they all do. The other thing you're not going to see is too many typos. If it's perfect, it could be red flag. And that some of that depends again on looking at that student prior work. So now all of a sudden we have all it's beautifully written, everything is perfect. And sometimes even that the vocabulary that's being used in it, we're saying, oh my gosh, where did they come up with this word? I haven't even used this word at all. I don't know what they're talking about. That if it's lacking typos, that can be a red flag. But you do have some students who use Grammarly. So Grammarly can also help them make sure that it looks really good and sometimes help them with the language. Do we think that using Grammarly is cheating? Like we would think that if we said, okay, ChatGPT, generate this research paper for me. One, at least Grammarly comes from something that they've written already. So yeah, I thanks Rick for putting that in the chat. Yeah, I mean, maybe not. Maybe you think it is, maybe you think it's not. And if it totally rewrites their answers, Mike, yeah, I hear what you're saying. If it's totally rewriting it, well, then it doesn't feel like it's, oh, it does have a generative function now, Rhonda. Oh, goodness. Yeah, see, that's something that we have to think about. And that's when we have those conversations with our students, that it's a great place to start. It's a great first draft. But if you're not making it your own, then there are some issues. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Also, eSchool News had an article to be able to detect. And one of the things is a lack of personal experiences, meaning that maybe you want them to put some personal experiences in there, but it's something like my family went to the beach in the car. It's more general, and you'll see that more often in the writing. Maybe there's some general experiences. But if they start naming people, Mom, Chloe, and me went to Rehoboth to swim and to shop, there's a little bit more details there. They probably wrote that themselves. But again, you can tell I might just be one of those people who I don't give a lot of description anyway when I talk to people. And my family went to the car, really went to the beach in the car, really was something I did. So again, it opens a conversation. These are just possible red flags. We have subject knowledge. This was the one I kind of referred to before. You're experts in your subjects. When AI generated work happens, it might lack depth or relevance to the assignment. So I've seen something like this in my courses that I taught, that I gave the prompt, and the work that was created really didn't satisfy the prompt. And I had provided the rubric before. It didn't satisfy the rubric. So they didn't do well on the paper anyway, because it didn't satisfy it. But it was very suspicious because it was a very general approach to what we were trying to do. And I had expected specific reflection, had expected specific experiences, and those were lacking from it, from the assignment they turned in. And then we have engagement and participation. So students who tend to rely, and it's funny, I asked ChatGPT, by the way, these past two, I said, so ChatGPT, how am I supposed to be able to tell the students used AI to generate their work? This was one of the things it said. It said a bunch of things. This was one of the things it said, subject knowledge. And the other thing it said was, well, they tend not to be really engaged in the course because they're relying on ChatGPT to create the answers for them. So they're not really participating in discussions, things like that. So I thought that was pretty interesting. All right, so here's a few red flags. which red flags do you find most useful moving forward, or do you have any that you can add to this? So I put them back on here to help with the kind of summarizing it. Or do you have any that you've noticed? Rick, you said one today, that you want to add to our list.
Honestly, Laura, I forget what I said today, but I do have one that I could add right now. What did I say today?
You were talking about bullets.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right. That's right. That was kind of an offhand comment. So, yeah, I've noticed that Chat GPT and probably most of the other AIs love bullet point lists. So we've probably all seen this, but suddenly in the past, students have been writing prose essays, and then all of a sudden, everything's a bullet point list. And I think I just add to that that most of these generative AI have a very particular tone of voice,
Mhm.
and you can get, if you're savvy with it, with your prompts and so forth, you can get the AI to change its tone of voice, but it's difficult even when you ask it to rephrase it and you ask it to write like this or that. It still tends to have that AI tone of voice. So I feel like once you see a couple, you can pick up on it pretty fast.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you. I was working with Kelly Davis for an AI presentation in nursing, and it was kind of funny. And we were using it to be able to. We were using an image creator, and it also comes up with a lot of bias in it too. So sometimes, now granted, sometimes students can write bias writing, but if we're detecting some bias, also, right now, ChatGPT only goes up until about 2021. So if you're not seeing more recent citations, then that could be a red flag. And I was working with another instructor in the education program, and I said, okay, so write this description as if I'm a sophomore in college. It was funny because it goes, oh, yeah, that's my jam. I like to teach. It started. So as Rick said, there's still an interesting flavor to it. We have several things in the chat. Let's see what we've got here. I saw that Mike had put in there too. It likes to summarize at the end, which our students don't usually do, and don't really do that really well. If it's again, if it's general, if it's doesn't provide concrete evidence from the source, it likes to provide those lists. Those are those bulleted things, and there's really nothing new in it. They like to use big words. Sometimes it can be very complicated, the vocabulary that it used. Excellent. Subject knowledge, they don't answer the question. And I like it. Mike suggested that you can put your own prompt into ChatGPT to kind of get an idea of how it might answer it. And I did that as well once. And I told a student, I said, your answer is eerily similar to one that was created by ChatGPT. And they swore up and down. They said, I've used it in other classes, but I didn't use it in this one. um, but it's interesting. Yeah. Yes, unless you tell it to, Ish points out that it doesn't use quotes. It's often a paraphrases for the sources. And he said you don't often see that in student work, good paraphrasing. And good instruction for writing is spotty at best in our school systems. And having been in the K-12 world, I know that from insider experience. So we don't often have students who really know how to write well there. I recommend the tutoring center though, or I'll recommend the D2L sourced tutoring that they can get so that they can get some assistance with it. So, but if you do it through D2L, what is that link? Oh, I had it in my head and it went right out. I'm 51. I turned 51 last week, so that's why. So if anyone can think of it, it's that little link. It's online tutoring that they can access. But you can see that they've accessed it. All right. Thank you for all of this. And I see one more. Dig deeper into the content. See if they can really talk to you about it. Is something that Mike suggested. All right. So what can you do? There's a few things you can do. BrainFuse. Thank you, Kelly. BrainFuse online tutoring that's available in D2L under tools that your students can seek out. And you can even assign it through there as well. We do have a couple of videos about brain fuse. If you need those, if you're interested in those, let me know, and I can make sure you have those links. So what can you do? There are customized assignments that you can write. So again, I told you I tried creating assignments that had more personal reflection in them, critical thinking. I'm teaching asynchronously, so I'm trying to bring the students into it. That can be difficult for AI generated content for it to approximate that. That way we can have original analysis, synthesis, creative expression, where we're trying to pull that from the students, what Mike was saying, having them know what they're talking about. Excellent. What else can you do? Well, in your feedback and follow-up questions, ask probing questions about the content of the submitted work. And that way students can reveal their comprehension of the material. And this can be done either online through the feedback, and sometimes you might have to teach students how do you find the feedback, or it can be done in person through specific follow-up questions. Your student hours could be used to invite students there so that you could have specific conversations with them as well. I've seen some research lately that talked about having targeted student hours that way. Excellent. There's lots still in the chat too, if you want to keep an eye on that so you can get new ideas there too. What else can you do? Personal reflections. We mentioned those personal reflections, but again, these are ones that really dive into their experiences. So for instance, when Kelly and I were working on that nursing one of the things we talked about was ChatGPT was good at coming up with some steps for CPR. But then if the students are able to add to those steps their own personal experiences with those, for instance, in their field placements, or with the mannequins, or with virtual reality, which Jason was just talking about earlier today at 12:30, that there are different opportunities that you can provide personal reflections where there are things that they can really dive into that AI, it's hard for it. Ethical dilemmas. Now, not all of our subject areas lend themselves to ethical dilemmas, but a lot of our social sciences do, in nursing, in education, even in science. I mean, we have lots of places where we might have ethical dilemmas that we can ask students to address. Multimodal presentations. So we even talked about presentations today a little bit when I saw Rick earlier too. That this can mean that you're asking them for text and images, maybe some video presentations or audio. AI isn't as good at that, or they certainly have to access AI in a lot of different places in order to do this, and it would be difficult to keep that all aligned. So those are the types of things that if you have the opportunity. Now, I want you to hear me on this too. It doesn't mean it's going to be all of your assignments either can do all of these things, but maybe you have at least one or two that are multimodal presentations in your course that help students really show what they know, not what ChatGPT knows, or an ethical dilemma. It might only be one assignment that you have, or it might be through conversations that you'd have. It's interesting, I did find a source that said, you know what, we have this tendency now to think that, okay, so we just won't have any online tests or online assignments. We will just do all paper, pencil, time tests in front of us, things like that. But then you have to think about accessibility for students who you may have some who have motor difficulties, who can't do that, or may have other disabilities that can't participate, and that actually by us going to technological versions of our assessments or of our assignments has really helped them to be able to show what they know, where before we might not have been able to really grasp what they were understanding because they didn't have a way to express it. So we do have to find that fine line. And that one is actually from MIT Sloan Teaching and Learning. And that's a resource that you have in that document that I shared with you. And I'll give you that link again if you missed it, so don't worry. Experiential learning journals. We have assignments that ask students to maintain journals or blogs that document their learning process. This can also just enhance what you're doing, can go along with what students are experiencing for your course. So in education, they have field placements. For nursing, they have field placements. Different actual experiences. If they're doing labs in your classrooms, they can write about the lab, the actual experience that they had with the lab. So they have this opportunity to really say what they're doing. I'm going to add one here that wasn't part of this presentation, that if they are going to use ChatGPT to start that first draft, here's another thing that you can do. You can say that's fine, use it for your first draft, but you also have to have a companion document that talks to me in detail about how you changed it from that first draft to what you're actually submitting for your work. I went to an artificial intelligence mini conference at University of Delaware one day that they talked about, and there's some different assignments that people are trying. And that's one of the things that they're doing is talk to me in detail. How did you change this? How did you use this information to create something that was all yours or was mostly yours, that you were able to modify the assignment? Let me ask you these questions. From these ideas that we just talked about, which one will you employ? Or have I inspired you to think in a different way that you'd like to be able to share with us here? Thank you, Nancy, for the virtual tutoring center link. That's a great thing to share with your students. I was reading in the chat a little bit above here and saw someone had suggested using hidden writing in a prompt, that you could use the words, what was it, dinosaur and pepper, so that when the paper is written, ChatGPT will pick up on that, but the students wouldn't have, because it was hidden text, it was white in the prompt. There are some issues with that too. I've heard of that before too. And some of the ethical issues on your side of that would be, now we're being sneaky, now we're being tricky. I know I saw something, it was a quote that it was a different presenter that I actually saw, I don't know, a year and a half ago, talking about AI, right? And when this is starting to come out, and saying if we spend too much of our energy trying to catch the cheaters, then we are doing a disservice to our honest students who really we want to be able to teach them. But I do think it's funny. I would be interested to see how it turned out, the dinosaur and pepper, but I don't know if we want to be, tricky like that all the time with our students. Excellent. Oh, I like some anecdotal ideas in there, surveying, for clarification, multimodal presentations. People like experiential learning. Terrific. A lot of multimodals in there. Detailed document indicating those changes. I mean, it really is a way for students to critically analyze what they've seen. Which makes me think of the next idea. We're going to evaluate the bot. So the next thing we do is we ask ChatGPT, create a paragraph describing photosynthesis for a 9-year-old. Now, what my students who should understand photosynthesis at this time, this was probably right in early 100s, then they read this. What do you think? How could you make it better? What needs to be changed? It is interesting because from studies I've read, students are more willing to tear this paragraph apart than if you wrote it, as an example, or if you ask them to tear apart their peers, right? Because this is a robot, it doesn't have any feelings, so they don't mind tearing this apart and trying to make it better. So this is one thing that you can do, is ask it to write this, and now students evaluate this. It is interesting too. I did hear another presenter, like I said, about a year ago, he was talking about how he had ChatGPT create something. He asked his students, what do you think? What grade would you give it? the students, oh, it's great. It's so wonderful because it is written well. It is written well, right? This is great. He said, well, I would fail them. The students, what are you talking about? Why? He said, because I distinctly said in the assignment, you must provide citations and you must have in-text citations. You must have the resources at the end. And they have none of that in here. So they would fail because they didn't provide the resources that I thought they should. Now, of course, that all depends on your level, your student level, and what familiarity you think they have with APA. And if you've given them maybe a couple mini lessons of, okay, this is what in-text citations look like. This is what I want to see from you, things like that. But if that is clearly stated in your assignment and your rubric, there it is. And I know I'll give my students at least some credit for attempts, even though I know they're not always going to be perfectly right. It's more of a learning opportunity, but it's something that you can think about. So then I said, okay, rewrite this paragraph for college freshmen. So beforehand, it says, imagine plants as magical factories that create their own food using sunlight, air, and water. This special process is called photosynthesis. When I asked it to rewrite it for college freshmen, photosynthesis, the remarkable biochemical process in plants, is akin to a complex factory system orchestrated by nature. Now, to me, that might be a little complicated even for my freshmen, but it is. You can see that it will do it differently. So Rick had kind of mentioned that earlier, that you can ask it to write in different voices and for different audiences. But you'll still want to review it to make sure that it's doing what you want it to do. You could have your students compare the 9-year-old one to the freshman one, ask it, what's missing, what makes it more confusing. Is using that word akin, is that confusing? Do we not know what that means? Things like that. And we can have them really evaluate it. What is a good use of this? I also said, please write it with a sense of humor. And I said, picture plants as nature's little chefs, donning tiny aprons and wielding photosynthesis spatulas like pros in a bustling kitchen. I will say that recently, when I've been using ChatGPT to try to get it to generate some things for me, sometimes I'll get it to help me generate maybe a scenario or a case study, to start with a case study, something like that. It often puts people in bustling cities, bustling towns, bustling kitchens lately. I don't know why, but that could be another red flag for you, that if your students are turning in things about bustling something, right now ChatGPT is in love with the word bustling. So just to kind of put that out there for you. But it's interesting to be able to see some of these things. All right. Are there thoughts so far on this idea of evaluating the bot?
Well, Laura, that's exactly what I was saying. I mean, that's not a college freshman, at least not at Delaware Tech. And so you ask it for its tone, and it still has a very specific, I mean, that's a pretty recognizable tone there.
Exactly. And I often tell my students, AI generators, they don't write with a soul. And you can tell that it's kind of empty. And I would much rather hear their voice and have there be some errors in it, than have something that's perfect, that it's not their writing. It's not what they intended. Okay. Are you ready to see some new things, that I discovered in ChatGPT also? Pretty exciting. So interestingly enough, last week when I was, really diving into this, making sure I had everything where I want it to be, I learned some new things about ChatGPT. And they talked about how you can change settings and things like that in your ChatGPT. And then I went today, I wanted to practice it, make sure I had it ready for y'all, and they changed it on me. It's different already. So I do want to show you what it looks like, but it is slightly different. So you might have noticed that there were things here in this bottom corner. There was a place where you could make settings. In fact, right now they just released availability of ChatGPT 4, a limited availability of that for free right now, so you can try some things out in ChatGPT 4. They just did that. Isn't that lovely? Just in time for this presentation, so it would be different. But here we go. So I looked up here, and under my little letters up here, I still have my settings, and I have my customized ChatGPT here. When we look in customized ChatGPT, this is where we can actually teach it to make certain responses for us. If you are often using it, but you want it to respond in a certain way, you can talk about here. So what would you like ChatGPT to know about you to provide better responses? You can type in there and it gives you some ideas. Look, here's my little Grammarly showing up. Get out of there. All right. You can type in there, you can say, what, can you see ChatGPT right now, by the way? Just make sure the screen did change for you. Okay, good. So it gives you some ideas. You can say, where are you based? Well, I'm in the mid-Atlantic. Maybe there's a difference in regional conversations. What do you do for work? I'm a college instructor. I'm an instructional designer. What are your hobbies and interests? This all depends on how much you want it to know about you. It can tailor some of its answers to you there. So if you are going to use this mostly for work, you might say, well, I'm a college instructor. I teach at a community college. That's the level of responses that I want. I teach in social sciences, or I teach in science, or I teach in English. It will help tailor answers towards you there, which is an interesting thing. So then your answers, you don't have to worry as much about the refining that Rick was talking about. It will refine it a little bit already based on what you think. Will it be perfect? No, but it can begin it. This is what I liked here. How would you like ChatGPT to respond? You can talk about formality if you want it to be kind of casual in how it responds to you. If please don't give me 7-paragraph answers. I only want 1-paragraph answers, something like that. The other thing that I learned that I really, really liked is you can get it to provide URL sources. So it'll tell you where it found the answer, which it didn't do that before for me. So I was excited to learn this. I can also have it include confidence levels. So if I tell it I want it to include confidence levels, for instance, I'm doing some scientific things, I'm doing some more mathematical things. I mean, I do a whole lot of literature-based things, so confidence levels don't matter as much to me. But maybe if I'm doing science, coding, things like that. Oh, I see in the chat, Rhonda says, oh no, you can circumvent all the red flags you gave me. But here's the thing, these URL sources, some of this is for you now that I'm talking about too. If you decide you want to use this, having these URL sources, in some ways, it's not going to present it in like an APA format anyway. I mean, I guess I could try it and see what it does. But but at least it's letting me know where it got its information, how it interpreted it, because then for me, and even for your students, they can look and see, well, is this what it really said? Is this what it really meant? Because I know that when I was working on my dissertation, for instance, if I read an article that referred to another article, I'd go to the source article, the primary article, and I would find that maybe the second one didn't interpret it the way that I felt it should have. I didn't agree with their interpretation. I did do that and I got all upset and I told my chair about it. It was a lovely, lively conversation. But I hear what you're saying, Rhonda. It's not necessarily that. I'll show you what it looks like. I'll show you what it looks like when it does it. And maybe that will help. Yes, you got it, Rick. I got you. All right, okay. So there's some things you can do. You can say, okay, you can put in your preferences in there. This is one that I ran today. Let's scroll up to the top. I told it, describe the best approaches for using ChatGPT in higher education setting, provide your URL sources, because I wanted you to be able to see what that might look like. And then here it is in bullets. Look at that, Rick. It gave me bullets, just like we thought it would. It gives me some answers. It gives me my introduction. Mike pointed out how it gives you a summary. It also tends to give an introduction. Our students don't often do that either, so that's another possible red flag. But look at this. It said it got it from UNF Press Books. It even told me it had 6 sites. So it's kind of interesting. UNF Press Books, I guess, if I click on it, it takes me there and I can see where they got the information. That's not necessarily a bad thing, so the students can now see where it came from. You can still see it's not in APA format or anything like that. They'd still have to be able to figure out how to do that. Then they had a whole bunch of UNF. I'm thinking, oh, why did you have only one? But then they went into inside higher ed. So this is something that's nice also for you as you're looking for research, looking for ideas. I'm going to ask it, why does the battery keep dying on my 06 Grand Mercury Mercury Grand Marquis, right? I'm going to ask it that so that I can get some information in it too. As someone who gives professional development, I like to not only tell you how you can use it in your class, how can you use it for you? Because until you can know how you can use it for you, it's sometimes hard to picture how can I use it in my class. So I like to throw a couple of those things in there. And then they also have an online teaching guide from University of Michigan and ChatGPT in Higher Education by Rob Rose. So they've got some different sites in there. I put an image in here. You can put an image in there now. Have you seen that before? So I put in my little image. It was my little Bitmoji. Let's see if it has it here. And let's put in a different one here. Let's put this one in here. I would be careful about giving it images that you don't want it to have. Personal, really. So that's why I put my Bitmoji in there. It's not really a photo of me. It's this. And I can say, provide alt text for this image. Interestingly enough, this also could be a good resource for you for those science charts or math charts that you want to put into your D2L course, but you need some alternative text for it. So this is an ethical way for you to be able to use it. And so it went down to the bottom here, but it's going to tell you about the alt text. So it's nice. It can give me that information of how it would alternatively describe this. And then that's when I do that little mouse over so that someone who has a screen reader can see my picture. We'll scroll back up. The picture I put in there before was me inside an apple. Avert your eyes for a second in case this is going to give you vertigo while I find where I was. Okay, so here it was. First I said, tell me about this image, and it was me in an apple. And it does this. This image depicts, it gave me 3 paragraphs. Well, I can't use that for alt text. But when I told it, give me alt text, it actually came up with a briefer idea. Now, some of your science charts or your math charts might be more complicated and might need more words. If you find that it's too long to fit in the alt text, talk to me. Or if you know how to do it, you can put a little accordion in the D2L and put full text for the image. And then you can have that inside of the accordion that drops down. That's how I usually circumvent that if my alt text is too long or too detailed for the image that I'm doing. But this is a great way to get started. And then we have a couple of other tools, and I'll make sure that they are in that document. This document is the one that I shared with you, because it's a Google Doc. It's a living document. I'll keep sharing resources there too. There's another one I have to get it through my out of my head that I just learned about a couple weeks ago. So and it was really good, and I'll have to remember what it is. Then I asked it, create an algorithm to solve world hunger. Provide your URL sources and confidence levels for your solution. So I wanted to give it something difficult. So it gave me an introduction, of course, my red flag. It gave me a bullet. Look at that, big surprise. But then it gave me confidence level was high that it could work. And here are some sources that I got it from. Went to the next one. It said optimize agricultural practices, improve agricultural productivity, sustainability, smart agriculture, genetically modified crops, sustainable practices. My confidence level is medium to high. There's a little bit less on this one, but here are my resources. So it's giving you an idea of how it's interpreting those resources. That's not necessarily a bad thing. To know, okay, well, it got these resources. I probably want to go to these resources. I want to look at them, make sure that it's interpreting them correctly, see if there's anything else that I can do to triangulate the data, things like that. We can scroll down and gave quite a few ideas. Confidence levels, and it even told me high, proven techniques, well-documented data, medium, approaches to variable outcomes depending on local conditions, and low, innovative or experimental approaches with limited large-scale implementation. So it's even giving you an idea of how it determined those. And here's some further reading. I asked it to create a table that shows the winning teams in a World Cup from 2000 to 2023 with headings that include date, team name, country name, and location of the World Cup. This is the most beautiful table I've seen it make before. That has started doing things like this. This is useful for you in your class. I'm telling you this. I know Rhonda said, oh no, the students, but you need to know this too, how you can do this. And now you can have this information presented in a nice way. You can ask it to write it in HTML, and then it's easily put into your D2L page so that you can recreate it. Because sometimes when we copy and paste these, it's really ugly. If you want to do that, let me know. I'll show you how. Okay. All right. But then I asked it, okay, provide confidence levels for this table and give your URL sources. It told me, well, 2002, Brazil, Brazil. I got it from FIFA World Cup 2002. So the sites are all kind of the same. But then it gave me the chart and added the confidence levels in there. Do I have people out there who knew about URL sources that you could ask ChatGPT to do that, or knew about confidence levels that you could ask it to do it? Did you know about it? Can you give me a thumbs up or a Y or an N in the chat? Okay, I see some no's. Excellent. Okay, good. Excellent, excellent. Okay, good. So you're getting some new things today. Oh, you can also ask it to tell you, are you speculating? Are you predicting? You can also write that in your prompt. Is this a, I don't know, steps for world peace? Home list, steps for world peace. Provide information of whether you are speculating. I don't know. Well, let's see what it looks like. And of course, I did say list, so it's going to give me a list for sure. You can ask it to do a narrative. It's not always beautiful, and it often puts it in a bustling city when you do. But, references. Look at that. But I don't see if it put in there. Here it is. It says the practical implementation of these measures involves a degree of speculation. So it kind of does. And depending upon how you word it or what your task is, it probably is better or worse. I would imagine it would look similar to where those confidence levels are, depending upon how you word it. All right, are we good so far? Thoughts? Okay. Here's even more. Perfecting the prompt. And Jason's going to talk a whole lot about perfecting the prompt. And we talked about it today too. We talked about giving it a voice. You say, write a letter of recommendation for a college freshman applying for an internship at Google. They are prompt and technologically proficient, but need to communicate more clearly. I don't know. Then it can provide this, and I like how it gives you kind of the format in case you didn't know how to put that information at the top. I didn't use anyone's name, so that's why it has brackets names. I would recommend don't use anyone's names because you're giving it to ChatGPT. Now, there is a new thing that you can do, and actually, I think you've been able to do this for a year. In those letters, in the settings, you can decide if it's going to keep your chats or not. And what I saw in my research was if you're deciding that it doesn't keep your chats, then it doesn't use them for training. I don't know if I totally trust that because, I'm a conspiracy theorist at heart. So I don't know if I totally trust that. But it says that if you tell it not to keep all your chats, then it knows it's not supposed to use them for training. But I still would be hesitant about putting names in here. Like I told Rick today, I'm not going to put in here, write a letter of recommendation for Rick Baker because I'm protective of Rick. I'm not going to put his information out there, and I can easily fill in these brackets. That's no problem. And look, your title, your position, I didn't give it my name either. Now, granted, I opened the account, so it kind of knows who I am anyway, but this is nice. This is one of the things Kelly and I talked about, the letter of recommendation. How many of you need to write letters of recommendation? This can give you a start. I would emphasize this is your first draft, but then you don't have to create it from scratch. Ah, I love it. Rhonda said FERPA violation. Yeah, don't put their name in there. Not good. Okay. And I showed you how it can create the table. If we wanted to, this table here, avert your eyes for a second. I'm scrolling. I don't want to give anybody vertigo. We'll get back up here. We'll create a table. And you can make it, do it in provide HTML programming for the, and then it should say kind of how the code that if you know how to use source code in your D2L pages, you can pop it into the D2L page. That's what I can show you if you want support doing that, if you want to reach out to me. But it's it's nice that it's taken a little while to do it. It's thinking hard. And I also want to show you another search chat thing that I discovered that it may have been around for a little bit, but I only just discovered it and I want to share it with you so that you could see what it looks like. And I think we can do that in just a couple of minutes. So you can see how this starts off and it puts coding in there, right? So this gives you the idea. And then you would take that coding and we put it into the source code of your page. If all that sounds foreign and you don't know what I'm talking about, again, reach out to me and I'll help you. And you can pop them into your D2L pages and it will be pretty. Okay? All right. We'll pause this for now. And I want to show you this one. This is SciSpace. I'll put this link directly into the chat, but it is on that document I shared with you. Ooh, James says that's cool. He knows how to do. Yeah, Rick says tell it to work faster next time. I don't know. Maybe it listens. Maybe it listens to that. Oh, I did have a request. Can we do something act as if? Natasha, do you mean that they're supposed to kind of interact with Chat GPT? Is that what you meant? If you want to type that in the chat, you can, or if you want to unmute, you can.
Oh,
So,
it might have
oh,
been a response to mine.
oh, oh,
I
sorry, Andy. Okay.
sorry, yeah, I know. I was just saying that this is really great. You might not need to use the act as if anymore now that we have that customize,
Mhm.
where we go ahead and clarify who we are and what kind of message we have. But I know in ChatGPT 3, I was like, act as if you're an instructor creating an announcement to students welcoming to the class. I want to include this, this, and this. Generate 2 paragraphs X, and it worked pretty well. And then as a first draft, and then you go ahead and adjust it for that class. I was just saying that it worked well for me in the past.
Terrific, Andy. Thank you so much for that feedback also. And everybody, that's Andy. So if you want some help with prompt engineering, he sounds like he's really, really good at that too. So, but he's right. The more information you give it in the prompt, there are things called mega prompts that are huge. And I've demonstrated those in some lunch and learns before. But the more information you give it, the more likely you are to get the answer that you want. This thing, it's called SciSpace. So if you Google SciSpace, it's interesting. It takes you to typeset.io. But what this does is it looks at scholarly PDFs for you, to the best of my knowledge so far from what I've played with. So if you want to get research for you, maybe we have some doctoral students out there. If you want your students to be able to read some of these PDFs, you can do that. So you type in here your question, and then when you put your question in, for instance, this is the one I had typed earlier. How does instructor presence influence student success in online courses? I am, kind of targeted in how I'm thinking. So then it brings up papers. It gives me kind of this little blurb here, and then it brings up papers that I can use as resources. Tells me the date and gives me some insights from those papers. So it's a nice thing that if you're doing your resource, you want your students to do resource, you can say, oh, I only want open access ones that I can get to and don't have to pay for. Then it'll show you all the open access ones too. I think there's a lot of promise for this. I haven't played with it a ton yet, like I told you, it's one of the new things I discovered, but it looks like there's a lot of promise there. One of the things you can do is upload a PDF. So I uploaded a PDF and I put in there, this is one that I had used actually for my dissertation. And then over here in the Copilot, and I'll show you what it does fresh too. Open or upload PDF. Oh, it didn't make me sign in before. Of course, now it wants me to. So I'll just show you what I did. When I uploaded this, it had some little questions over there, and one of them was explain the practical implications of this paper. And then it generated for me to help kind of summarize it, practical implications. Researchers define social presence in online learning environments based on behaviors and perceptions, with some emphasizing connection and community, potentially confusing social presence with social space. And then here's the resource, which should be all from this paper, but you can have it work across papers too. So as you're trying to come up with good examples for your students as well, you might find this useful. And another one that maybe you have or haven't seen is perplexity. And perplexity, when you use this, does photosynthesis work? One of the nice things about perplexity is it gives you images if it has them. It gives you the resources where it found the information. So it has a Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a good place to start, but we know that it's not always the most reliable resource. But then it gives you some answers. So it's a good way to start or to be able to get some information, get some basics. And those are on that research or on that paper, and I'll put that in the chat again. And do you have any questions or thoughts? Have I made you think? And now you're saying, oh, but Flora, how about this? And here's my email. So if you want to reach out to me or find me on Teams, whichever you prefer. I would love to be able to have this conversation with you more. This is a big thing that I do. And I would love to have, and I know that in this room we have, gosh, 61 people. So I know we have even more people out there who know what they're doing. And I would love to get information from you as well, because we have 61 people who know other resources instead of just the ones that I know. All right, does anyone, if you have questions, I can stick around for a bit so that I can answer any questions that you have. If you want to jump into more AI because you just can't get enough, Jason is presenting after this one. And then there's some good engagement ones after this one too, if you want more engagement. It's great, some great resources still. Oh no, Jean Marie, I know. Everyone, I had one I reflected on. I went, oh yeah, that student was so eloquent, so eloquent. Oh, maybe they weren't as gifted as I thought they were. Maybe. Well, thank you everyone for coming today.